Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Case by Case, episode 8 of the Delphi Vault, where we are going to continue to deep dive the case, going all the way back to the very beginning and going over all of the things that made this case such a spotlighted case in the community of Indiana and then eventually across the country. Tonight, I'm going to go over some of the things that we went over yesterday, and we're going to go on further into vehicles and sightings and statements that were made early on. Welcome, everybody in the chat. Cherie is here with me tonight. I may have a couple of other guests come on, but for right now, we're going to kick this off with a video that I feel we can all relate to as far as what things were said and what was being done back on February 13th, 2017. And I want all of you to watch it and take note and pay attention to what's said and what's not said and where people claim to be. So let's get into it.
When you got the call that day that there were two missing girls here at the trails, what went through your mind?
Initially, I thought, okay, no problem, we'll find them.
When you got the call that day that there were two missing girls here at the trails, what went through your mind?
Initially, I thought, okay, no problem, we'll find them.
And when did that change for you?
Later in the evening and actually after nightfall, I thought, okay, something's different about this.
Where are Libby and Abby? These two teen girls have not been spotted in nearly 24 hours. That's where we're starting today at 12:30, the ongoing search for Libby German and Abby Williams. This story is unfolding right now in Delphi. That's in Carroll County, about 20 minutes northeast of Lafayette.
Story tonight, two Carroll County girls have gone missing near the Monon High Bridge Trail in Delphi. News 18's Alexis Moberger joins us live and reports how several law enforcement agencies are looking for them. Alexis.
Brittany, the two 13-year-old girls went missing hours ago and were told they haven't been answering their phones ever since. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office say the girls were last seen around 1 o'clock this afternoon near the Monon High Bridge Trail. Liberty, or Libby German, and Abigail Williams were dropped off by a family member. When she came back to pick them up around the arranged time, they never showed up. The Sheriff's Office was then notified around 5:30 tonight. Right now, several deputies are out looking for the two girls and are even using drones to help locate them. We're also told that DNR is out by the water searching and trying to locate the girls as well. Police are asking for the public's help. If anyone knows anything about where they could be or where they were last seen, they are encouraged to contact the Carroll County Sheriff's Office.
I remember Becky had said, Libby's afraid of the dark. And that was really the first time I considered the fact that there was something very serious.
Libby lost somewhere in the woods, or did she drop her phone or something? And also that she was going to be in a lot of trouble when we found her.
But I was sure that there was a logical explanation, and it was just some fluke that happened. Then me and Cody crossed the bridge, and we're looking in the woods, and we couldn't find them anywhere. That's when I started to realize something was really wrong.
How many people at a drop of a hat dropped everything that they were doing and came out and searched? There was flashlights everywhere.
Everywhere. It was just like the stars in the sky, you know?
I had contact with another department east of here. I asked them to maybe start searching Deer Creek and working this way, which is an 8-mile walk, by road, and it's even farther on the creek. So they started working in Camden, coming this way, searching.
There was so much stuff going through my mind at the time that I just kind of went with it, and I was yelling her name so that she could hear me, and I hope that she did hear us searching.
I believe we were out till about 1:30 in the morning. And I finally met up with the sheriff and the city chief of police, and I said, you know, my guys are volunteer. You know, they have to go to work in the morning. We will do whatever you want, but I have to kind of look out for that aspect of, you know, the volunteers. So look, we have blanketed, you know, this area. I honestly feel like we could probably check it off and you know, head home.
I begged them not. I said, they don't have codes.
The girls haven't answered their phones since around the time they went missing.
Missing, abducted, we don't know for sure. Cell phone has been pinging around town here. There's a cell phone tower, but the ping was last noted about 5 or 6 hours ago. They say the phone's now dead.
In the very early hours of the 14th of February, and not long after the official search had been called off for the night, Sheriff Tobe Lesenby was notified that a cell tower had picked up a signal from one of the girls' cell phones.
And I got a call, I think at 2:30 from the sheriff, and they were wanting some lighting to go out and see if we could find the cell phone because the latest ping was coming back to the area of the Monon High Bridge.
Mike said they're not stopping.
A few of us went back out to help search for the cell phone, and we didn't find anything at that time.
It was somewhat humbling, you know that people were coming out, you know, to truly help.
We worry more than most at the mercy of ghosts. Oh, can't you tell by the way we stare? Every moment a tomb, always open.
Okay, the rest of that video is just basically scenery and music. But did you notice the discussion about the phone pinging everywhere, then the phone being reported as dead, the whole area being searched, and Mike Patty suggesting that they chalk it up as they didn't find anything? This is on February 14th, after midnight, I believe, because the news clip said 5:02 a.m. that this is being stated. Then they talk about a 2:30 phone ping that caused them all to go back out looking for the phone. I just feel those are things that, you know, regardless to how you feel about this case right now, regardless to how you feel about Rick Allen, those are things that were said in the moment that at the moment were factual and true based on the information coming in to the police department and the family. Yet here we are 8 years later and it's all changed. Let me welcome now my co-host Cherie and Mr. Michael Osbrook.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hey. How's everybody doing?
I'm struggling here with Clip Champ.
Well, we won't I'll wait for it to come through to me. So, hey T, how are you? Hopefully All Eyes will be joining us here in a little bit. I gave her the link. I need her help on a couple of things. But mainly about the Betsy Blair Fitbit data. I feel that she's got a little bit more under wraps than what I do. I struggle with it because there's so much data and my brain is a little bit warped going back all the way to the beginning. But did you guys pay attention? Hi, Candy. Thank you. Did you guys pay attention to that video where they discussed when the search was called off? Because I did. And
when it was called off? Is that what you said?
Yeah, when it was called off.
I didn't notice the exact time, but it was too early.
It was approximately, they stated, between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to pull something up here that I think, again, is very telling. In the heat of the moment. Now, Kyle Smith he's from Delphi. Kyle Smith was also the very first person. I believe I have his post in another episode of The Vault, where he is the one who initially posted both shots that supposedly came from Libby's Snapchat. The first photo that Libby took of the bridge in front of her with no one on it, and then the 207 photo of Abby. He posted both of those photos side by side and claimed that he was out searching. Here we are again, Kyle Smith with Michaela Babcock that he has tagged and two others, which I cannot see, where he is stating this is February 13th, 2017 at 10:28 p.m. Didn't find any leads, no evidence so far. They called off the search for tonight. Spent about 2.5 hours with Delphi police and fire looking and searching the High Bridge area. Continued search in the morning and all day as far as I'm concerned. Then you have someone that commented, what time are they resuming the search tomorrow? Michaela Babcock, which it's important to know that Michaela Babcock was, I'm not going to get into the logistics of it, but she's somewhat related to the family. She was also involved in a relationship with Garrett Kurtz at that time. Michaela Babcock replies, at daybreak, I asked Kelsey M. German to let me know. Kelsey M. German replies to her comment and says, all they said was daybreak. I promise I'll be out as soon as the sun comes up. So unless I'm stupid and I'm reading into this something that's not there, it sounds to me that this post came out at 10:28. Shortly thereafter, Kelsey's already conceding to the fact that she's home, but she'll be out at daybreak to help search. So why do we have a random non-family member, non-law enforcement, non-fire department individual posting at 10:28 that the search was already canceled? And then people want to know why we question everything from day one about this case. The post, no, it wasn't actually with Cody. Cody wasn't the person that I blocked out on this post. It was actually a female. Well, I'm Eastern Standard Time, and Delphi is the same time as me. So the time on the screenshot wouldn't change based on where they are in the time zone. The time zone in Indiana doesn't change until you get out further west towards like Newton County. That's when the time switches over. And it only switches over by an hour. So if I'm absolutely bonkers, then this screenshot at the latest could have been posted at 11:28, not after midnight and not at 2 a.m. So comments before I move on? No? Okay. Love Bomb says, I want to know who John Weaver that said they were in the creek was. That has always bugged me. I think I've went over that in another Love Bomb. I went over that before in another Vault episode about John Weaver and who he was and all of those allegations. Yeah, an officer did report on the scanner that a John Weaver did tell them that the girls were in the creek. Yeah, we still have a lot of people rolling in. So let me pull this down. Michael?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, before I go on, is there a topic that you want to bring up tonight?
No, I'm here to kibitz mostly. You all know more about this stuff than I do, for sure.
Okay, so there was some yesterday when I started this episode, part 7. This is tonight, part 8. I talked about what was posted in the PCA, the probable cause affidavit. This is law enforcement's words, not mine, not misconstrued, but law enforcement put in the probable cause affidavit, and I feel that it's very important based on the circumstances of the parking of Richard Allen. They claim that the 4 girls that they say Rick Allen saw, they were walking on the trail toward Freedom Bridge to go home when they encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge toward the Monon High Bridge. So that statement right there, I don't believe if the girls were still on the trail and hadn't yet left or exited the trail system, they would have said they encountered this male on the trail, not coming from Freedom Bridge. There is a good distance between the start of the trailhead and the end of Freedom Bridge approaching the trailhead. And even if you are still coming from the trail, you have a good clean shot of the Freedom Bridge. You're looking dead at it. You would know if an individual is approaching you and where that individual is coming from. Amy G. Rick says he saw 3 girls heading towards Mears Farm entrance area on the trail. He does call it trailhead. No, he didn't see them at Mears. Rick parked on the north side of Freedom Bridge, which is now an area that has like monuments over there, but it used to be a parking lot. So are we supposed to ignore what law enforcement put in the probable cause affidavit as to where this individual was coming from? Because like everyone in this case has claimed, words matter. Words absolutely matter. So if they took the photograph on the bench at 126, and we know that that is the last bench on the trail because they discuss a green roof in the background, which is a house that you can see in the foreground. If they leave the bench at 126, okay, first of all, let's do this. Let me get there. I have so many slides, and I'm sorry, I have to scroll through them. And I just feel this is very important. So the girls took the photo at 126 on the bench, which is probably about, I don't know, I'm going to guesstimate between 20 and 50 yards from exiting the trail. And then there's probably, I don't know, 20 to 30 yards from the exiting of the trail to the Freedom Bridge. Let me take this comment down here. So if they're taking the photo at 1:26 p.m., looking at this map right here, this big yellow arrow right here would be the CPS lot. Now, at the top of the screen, which you can't see on this map, would be the Hoosier Harvest Store. Further up, where his vehicle is captured at 127, supposedly, if you believe the state's theory. So he's going past the Hoosier Harvest Store at 127, pulls up here into this parking lot where this arrow is, and he parks. So being the deviant that the state wants us to believe that he is, I'm sure he sat there in the car making sure he had his entire kill kit together. Whether this is Rick Allen or not, whoever this individual is that they claim parked here, that they don't have any proof of that parked here. All they have is a dark colored car going past the Hoosier Harvest camera, but there's no proof that anybody parked here. He would have then had to have gotten out of his vehicle, walked all the way up this road, along the side of the road where there are cars coming and going. Brilliant. Brilliant for someone who is capable of doing all of this and not leaving DNA, right? He just walked up the side of the road for everyone to see him, then walked out, crisscrossed over into the area of the trailhead for all to see, to encounter every single person who may have been on the trails that day. He went to the furthest entrance of the trailhead, only to walk to the opposite end where the trail dead ends at the Monon High Bridge. However, like I said yesterday, the route that the state wants us to believe that he took was the long way around. And those who believe that this vehicle that passed the Hoosier Harvest Store was Rick Allen's, they want you to believe that this vehicle left Whiteman Drive, which is an 11-minute drive, to go the long way around, all the way around the back way, down 300, only to pass multiple areas where he could have easier access to trails. Only because he then was thinking he was going to go this way to, avoid being caught on camera. So he wants to avoid being caught on camera, but yet he's going to go to the farthest distance of the trailhead only to physically be within 2 feet of individuals walking on the trail. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. And unfortunately, because I guess 7 years later, he never thought that he was going to have to, speak to exactly where he parked. He didn't know the name of exactly the place that he parked, but he did know that he didn't park at the CPS building. And law enforcement knew it too, because they spent almost 45 minutes of his interrogation arguing about it. So, thoughts? Michael, Cherie?
Sorry. I really don't know what to make. I really don't know what to make of it all. So I leave it up to you all geniuses, but I will have a link to a clip for you in a minute.
Okay, perfect. So people in chat, do you guys think I'm taking that too far? Do you feel like it's a reasonable theory that he would have taken that long? I mean, let's just remember, let's be reasonable and problematic here, that to get to the CPS lot, he could have gone either way. He could have gone through town to get to the CPS lot, or he could have gone this long way around. And you're stuck with the conundrum of, did he not go through town like law enforcement wants you to believe because he wanted to avoid cameras, but he was willing to risk going the long way around to park at the CPS lot to have to expose himself to anyone and everyone driving by. And then he would have to basically backtrack, entering the trailhead all the way down until it's exhausted to the bridge, and not knowing, I mean, there's absolutely no way anybody would have known who would have been walking on that trail that day. I mean, there could have been 50 people out that day because it was a nice day. Kids didn't have school. So if we're to believe that this individual that these girls claimed they saw was on a mission, walking through the trail where they claim he came from, which was Freedom Bridge, based on law enforcement's words themselves, he came from Freedom Bridge, which means he did not come from the CPS lot. That matters because that changes everything. That changes who owns the car seen on the Hoosier Harvest store. And it could very well change the timing of this whole entire event. Let me see here. ACV says, who else took an out of the way route that coincidentally avoids being on camera? Well, I guess at this point in time, do you know something that we don't know? Because I feel like we don't have a complete investigation of anybody who was reported being on the trail that day. Oh no, you guys, you're fine if you're just late getting in here. Sorry guys, I'm trying to catch up. All eyes, get your butt up here. And I agree. The old CPS building was the most visible place anyone could have parked. And I mean, when you think about the dynamics of where it sits, it is the furthest away from where he's attempting to go to do some secretive criminal activity. And then it also requires him to trek back that full distance. And there's so many people, and you're going to see as I continue to go through this, there are so many people out there that day. And we've been hung up on this group one, the Bree Wilbur, the Rayleigh Voorhees and them that were out at the main trailhead, which I have dictated as trailhead number one, since people misconstrue the two. Some people call the trailhead out by Freedom Bridge the trailhead. Some people call the trailhead at Mears the trailhead. So I have dubbed the one by Freedom Bridge as trailhead 1 and the Mears trailhead 2, just for simplicity. But there are so many people out here on the bridge, and there's so many more people at the bridge closer to the times that Abby and Libby would have been there than group one, that the 3 girls who were called to testify. And I just think that going back and going through all of this, we have forgotten the complexity of this case. And when I look at what we ended up with at trial, I'm going, oh my God, we excluded the state, we the people, we want to believe that the prosecutor is putting on the best case and the truthful case. Yet I'm going, dude, you're pulling a fast one because you're leaving so much out. And I'm sorry, I know that Brad and Andy fought their ass off for Rick, but there's a million things that they could have put on, a million things that would have helped change the direction of this trial. without really having to pay for experts or without having to do a lot of things. They should have just called witnesses that were witnesses from day one, whose stories didn't line up, that bogged down the timeline, and that didn't happen. So Mr. Scott says Ricky found his window of opportunity because he'd been out there hunting many times before. Had he really, Mr. Scott? What? You know, I look that a comment like that, Mr. Scott, is really frustrating to me. And I don't want to run you off. I want you to feel welcome to speak your mind. But if you're going to speak your mind, you have to give me the same courtesy. You are taking one out of a massive amount of suspects, and you're taking the one who has zero history of any type of interest in crime, child trafficking, child explicit photographing. There's no history, and you're talking a search warrant that produced a shit ton of electronics, laptops, computers, phones, flip phones from Walmart. I mean, you're talking a crap ton of devices, and they couldn't find not one thing linking him to any of this. Yet you've got someone like a Ron Logan who bold-faced lied in advance about an alibi that he shouldn't have known that he needed, with a history of alcoholism, with a history of abusing women, with a history of hitting on young girls. Just take him, for example, the same person that the FBI thought was their number one suspect that they served a search warrant on, whose phone pinged in multiple areas out there, not only at the bridge, but also at the crime scene. Why does that not supersede this other guy who simply took a walk on the trail that day? Or supersede someone like a Garrett Kurtz, who out of his own mouth said he was familiar with the property, ran amok on the property, couldn't tell you his own words live in an interview. He couldn't tell you where he was that day, and he didn't have to tell you where he was that day. It was the law enforcement's responsibility. He was too fucked up on meth and spice to recall. And multiple members of his family turned him in as a suspect, including his payday, Ron Logan, pointed the finger at him. Why do those people not supersede Rick Allen? And then you're going to say that Rick Allen was out there hunting multiple times? Where do you get that statement from? That's what I want to know. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. And I'm going to be flat out honest. If the state would have put on real evidence, and I thought, and I'm just not me. If all of us thought that Rick Allen was the right guy, we wouldn't be having these lives right now. We would have moved on to different cases that deserve coverage. But this one also deserves all eyes on it because the state didn't do that. In fact, the state proved that they were willing to lie, cheat, hide, lose, cover up, anything that they could possibly do to win this case, they did. And they did it pretty much right out in the open by the time we got to trial. They had no shame in their game because they had a woman on the bench who was willing to allow it to pass bar. She was going to allow them to get away with everything that they wanted to do in order to get this conviction. Why? because they wanted this case to go away. This case was a shit show. And when I've got video that I could pull up right now of Mike Patty singing praises of law enforcement 3 weeks after these two little girls were found, I'm talking 3 weeks. So we know that it took 3 days just for an autopsy to be done. It took over a week for there to be a funeral. And a week and a half later, Mike Patty's on here singing the praises of law enforcement and how he knows they are going to find these killers. They are about business. They're doing their job. Did he know then that their first X amount of interviews had already been recorded over? And they were already scrambling to hide the fact that they fucked up? No, he doesn't know that, but he knows that now. Then, in the next breath, in the next sentence, he's talking about, thank you for all of the help. And we are now going to start preparing for an Abby and Libby Memorial Park. You mean to tell me 3 weeks after these two little girls were found, that's already in the works? That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. So I take it Mr. Scott left or he's not going to respond. But I find that accusation absurd. You're right. Indy Cindy, all of the newspapers and all of the reports say that the girls were last seen at 1 p.m., which is not true. It was 45 minutes after the fact. They were supposedly dropped off around 1:45, if we are to believe that it is Kelsey's car that we see on the Hoosier Harvest video at 1:49. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Somebody else talk. All eyes, are you going to come up? I need you to come up and explain the Fitbit data for us so I don't mess it up. Okay, so I'm skipping a couple of slides because that goes over the Fitbit data, and I don't want to murky the waters because I want to make sure that it's explained correctly. So we have Betsy Blair heading back to the Mears lot. This was at 1:46 and 20 seconds. We're going with that because that's what the exhibit says. That's what passed. Apparently, the defense approved it, that we weren't going to argue the semantics about the Hoosier Harvest Store camera being ahead by 54 minutes. So that enabled the defense to just basically plant on each photo the timestamp that they claimed it was, which, okay. Then we have Kelsey German passing at 1:49. So I brought this up earlier today with Michael about the picture of this car that we're looking at, the white car. And if you guys remember at trial, Becky testified that Kelsey was driving the Bonneville, which is a cream-colored older model sedan. Kelsey then testified that she was driving a Mazda. Looking at this photograph, do you guys believe this is a Bonneville or if this is some sort of a model? Well, that was ACV. That was my issue as well. Was yes, it's supposed to be off by 54 minutes. It's supposed to be ahead by 54 minutes, which no, I cannot find anywhere in pretrial motions or pretrial filings where that is explained thoroughly. And it was not discussed in front of the jury. It was something that was pre-agreed upon. I'm assuming something like a proffer during pretrial, that the defense conceded that yes, they agreed that the Hoosier Harvester was off by 54 minutes. And again, here we are with more evidence that is either screwed up by timestamps, recorded over, missing, or indifferent to what it should be. So, Michael, do you have any insight as to the Hoosier Harvester camera being 54 minutes off?
I do not. I think it's probably going to be off by some based on my memory of the phone data. But what we have is, I think, the picture of Kelsey's car with the time on it, or what they say is Kelsey's car. And I think that there's stuff in the phone data that I can tie up to at least when the girls got out of the car. So, my guess is it's not going to be 54 minutes. I'll see what it says.
But I mean, do you agree that that is what we were left to believe, that it was, that the camera was ahead by 54 minutes? So that is why we have the state time stamping their own times on these exhibits. Because when you look at the photograph up here, you've got a time that doesn't correlate with the time down here on the bottom left in any of the photos.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, I just have to go look at the phone data and see what I can tell about the time difference.
Well, I have it, and I could be wrong, but I have it that we have a 3-minute and 14-second window in between these two cars coming and going. And we have, I should have pulled it in here, but if we take Kelsey's statement that she was still on the phone with her boyfriend when she pulled into the Mears lot, that would be at 1:46. If I remember correctly, that she was still on the phone with her boyfriend. And 1:46 is the same exact time. 1:46, 20 seconds is when we see Betsy Blair returning on 300. And from being there, I can tell you that where the Hoosier Harvest Store is and the Mears entrance, you're talking 30 seconds. It's not that far. And if Kelsey's pulling in, stopping the car, we know that she somewhat fabricated. She made sure both girls had on sweatshirts. Well, we know now that Abby had on a sweatshirt in the car already that Kelsey claimed belonged to her, because Kelsey later on posted a picture of herself supposedly wearing that same sweatshirt, or zip up. So I guess we're to believe that Betsy Blair and Kelsey, they weren't in the Mears lot at the same time, because 3 minutes and 14 seconds really isn't a lot of time for Betsy Blair to walk from the Mears entrance all the way to the bridge, see young bridge guy, and then turn around and take her halfway back to where she claimed that she encountered Abby and Libby passing her. Does that make sense to anybody? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, of course.
So I know that when Cherie and I like, and I know I've said this 100 times, but and you got to do the math, and then you got to figure in the steps and the rate of the steps. I'm 5'1", and I know Abby and Libby both were considered to be 5'4". There she is.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
So
Hey,
I
hey,
know.
check your text for a screenshot of the white sedan,
Okay.
which
Oh.
kind of looks like it has a spoiler on it.
Okay. I'm gonna have to send this to myself and then pull it in. All right. What I was saying is that from the mirrors, like when I was there, the gate was already up. The mirrors were no longer allowing anyone to park there. So Cherie and I started from the furthest point by the edge of 300, and we started walking. And with my stopwatch, we walked normal. I'm 5'1", so I'm not taking massive, large steps. It took 8 minutes, 0.3 seconds to get to the very first plank on the bridge, not the platform, the start of the bridge.
Yeah, that's about the average from everybody who's been out there. I feel like 8 minutes, right about.
Yeah. So you're talking, it took Betsy Blair. So let's say that she's ahead of the girls by 2 minutes. It takes 7 to 9, let's give her an average, 7 to 9 minutes to get to the edge of the bridge, or at least to the barrier, because there's conflicting stories, whether she went up to the
Yeah.
bridge and saw a young bridge guy. I don't believe that if she stopped at the barrier, she could have really seen anybody on the first platform in 2017. So I feel like there's a 5-minute discrepancy. And although 5 minutes sounds minute, I feel like 5 minutes is a big deal in this case.
Yeah, I've tried every which way. Like if it took her 6 minutes to go from here to there, then 6 minutes to go back from there to there, at least to the trail split. She couldn't have had the same path on the third loop as she did the first two, just if we're going based solely on her, just on the Fitbit data. And I try to remember she was speed walking, like when people are exercising, maybe she's walking faster. But regardless of that, she was barely in front of them. And Bridge Guy, if he was on the first platform, he still would have been there when the girls walked up. He didn't have anywhere to go other than there in 2 minutes. And that's where I'm at least with the Fitbit data. But hang on, am I echoing or is that just me? I'm trying to make sure I have everything else closed.
Yeah, no, you're not echoing.
Okay.
Well, can you break down for us?
Well, hang on a second. I mean, he would have had time to go down
Not far.
down under the bridge where the geocache thing is.
Potentially, but he would have had, like, if he would have had to have already started walking while she was looking at him. She said he looked at her like he was looking for somebody, and he kind of stood there. And depending on how far behind Betsy the girls were, that really, I guess technically he could, but
I don't personally feel that. Okay, if he was on the first platform, time wise, in order to get down under the bridge, it's a complete drop off. Like if he was to come off the first platform and head back, not going to the south end, but going back to the start at the north end. On either side, it is a complete drop off. There's no way to get down. He would have had to have gone all the way back down towards the Mears lot over to the 505 and taken that slope down. However,
or he would have had to have, like, climbed, there's that video of Greeno climbing up and down the trestle.
Yes,
some
but what
locals would do that, but I don't think he could do it from where he was. I think you can climb up that way. I don't know if you can climb down that way.
He could have, if Betsy Blair turned around and started walking away, He could have then proceeded to follow her. Once he got off the bridge and back onto the trail following her, he could have made that immediate right onto that trail that leads into the woods that would have taken you all the way around to the cemetery and then to Ron Logan's. That at that time, and it's still, to be honest, I've walked it, and we were out there in the fall. I've been out there in the fall twice, and even with the leaves like half off the trees, still on the trees, you still kind of feel like you're in the wide open, and there were so many people out there. I just didn't feel comfortable going all the way down to the crime scene because I was afraid, because there's so many do not trespass signs. But he could have walked there. But prior to that, when I'm talking about the Fitbit data that I've discussed with you before, and you've got the girls out at what I would consider the main trailhead out there by Freedom Bridge.
Yes.
And they're encountering this unknown male. The Fitbit data has Betsy Blair already starting her third loop. Am I right?
I've gone back and forth on this because I think she is, but like we know she was there on Hoosier Harvester around 12:02, I think, when she was arriving. And we've got Bree and Riley and the other two on Freedom Bridge at 12:25, and then it takes them from 12:25 all the way to 12:43 to get to Monon High Bridge. They would have crossed paths somewhere in there. I don't think they have, but it's hard for me to not know that fact. So it's hard for me to figure out where exactly she actually was, other than the path that she said she was. And they just magically didn't see each other somehow. But she would have been walking the first loop sometime between 12 and like 12:35-ish. And then the second loop from 12:35-ish to like 1:05-ish. And then she's seen leaving. But it's like 5-minute differences, a little bit more, a little bit less on both loops. But the problem with Fitbit data is it's kind of come up in the Karen Reed thing about, when you're talking smart devices, it depends on what prompts the device to start recording. And sometimes there's a bit of it's not really a delay in recording so much as reporting. And until you kind of, how if you look at like the weather, if you look at the weather for 7-day, you get the gist. If you look at it for the day of, you get a better understanding of, it's a little bit more precise. And then if you go hour by hour, it's a lot more precise. We have like a 24-hour period with Betsy. So there's room in there, and it's probably about the difference in time. Like, it's helpful to have the Hoosier Harvest Store if it's been adjusted accurately, but we have all these things like that. Like, there's all these variances that are very difficult to pinpoint it down. It would actually be easier for us to pinpoint other people down with something more concrete and kind of say, well, it's only possible for this or that with her. But with the Fitbit data, like roughly, she was doing her first two loops from 12 to 1/115, because she's not seen leaving until I think 1:14. I can't remember the one o'clock
hold
time.
on. I think I have your timeline pulled up.
Yeah. I was trying to pull it up while I was talking, but I'm on mobile at the moment and I couldn't get it to load.
I got it. So I'll pull that up and we can go through it, simply because it's important. Let me see here. Let me pull this off. Let me share my screen. So I think this is the right one. Can you guys see that? Is it coming up?
I can see a timeline.
Okay, so we've got, we're starting with the Ron Logan drives to the transfer station from 11:53 to 11:58. This is including Rick Allen's timeline. At 11:55, he stops by his house to grab a jacket and sweatshirt, then heads to the trail to take a short walk. We're going to skip through those. We've got Collier, Mata, and Herrera leaving the Monon High Bridge trail and walk to the city park roughly around 12 p.m. Betsy Blair's vehicle is seen on the Hoosier Harvest Store video driving towards the Mears lot at 12:02. So I'm assuming this is the first time we see her approaching the Mears lot to start her walk. Is this right?
That's the first one according to the trial exhibits. We didn't get screenshots for all of the cars that came and went, but that's the first one for her first trip there, as far as we know.
Okay, so 12:03, we have Betsy parks at the Mears lot. Her Fitbit data shows activity for the first of her 3 loops walking the trail. She begins walking towards Monon High Bridge for loop 1, and we know that she goes to the Monon High Bridge first. Then she goes back to the 505. She goes down the 505 towards the water, comes back up, and then goes out towards Freedom Bridge and then back. At 12:10, we have Betsy turns around at the Monon High Bridge, walks back towards the trail split for loop 1. Based on Rick Allen's version, at 12:20, he reaches the trail split and continues to the Monon High Bridge. So this right here, I looked at this before. Betsy turns around from the Monon High Bridge and walks back towards the Mears entrance. However, instead of turning right, she goes left down the 505. Is it out of the question that Rick would have been coming up the trail past the 505 and went on to the Monon High Bridge as Betsy Blair was down at the water's edge?
I think it's about as possible as, however, she also didn't, like, she just missed the other girls at least twice, maybe 3 times too.
And see, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so much out there, so many variables out there on this trail. And it's not simply Rick Allen eluding everybody. Everybody that was out there we have Fitbit data, we have photographs, we have 12:43 at the Monon High Bridge, we have 1:26 at the bench. They all missed each other.
Well, even with the afternoon witnesses, Dave McCain reported seeing Daniel and Shelby Hicks, but he said that was all he saw. Well, we know that the other people saw him and he didn't see them. They actually crossed paths and apparently didn't see each other. And if it were Richard Allen who said that, we'd be like, oh, he's lying. Like we would, he's been assigned all this nefarious stuff for not seeing people. Well, he's not the only one who didn't see people who saw him. Like it happened several times that day with completely different groups of people. So I keep trying to keep that in mind. And with these timestamps that I have on here, that is me trying to just take all of the averages of all of the other people who went out there walking, how long it took them to do this or that. It's just me. And I'm having to approximate it because even in the interrogation, he was very clear, like, depending on what time I got there, I was there about an hour. So it could have been 1:30, 1:45. Like, he was just listing off times because he was like, whatever time I left, it depends on what time I got there. And he's like, I guess I would have got there probably around noon because I left around 11:15. So like everybody kind of did that, but he was the only one who wasn't able to check before 5 years went by. He probably would have checked a lot of stuff like everybody else was able to, but it's just this is the best I can tell. Like if he got there around noon and he was walking towards the bridge or the overlook bench at the trail split, it would have been about 15 or 20 minutes because that's about how long it took. They were at Freedom Bridge at 12:25 and didn't get to Monon High Bridge until 12:43.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it could be a little faster, it could be a little slower. We just don't technically know.
Well, there was one insert here in this timeline that struck me, and I think I captured it in yesterday's slides that I did. That let me find it here real quick. Right here, 12:39 p.m. Okay, this is a little less than an hour before supposedly we see Rick Allen's vehicle on the Hoosier Harvest Store camera. But according to the third Franks notice and the request for the Franks hearing based upon newly discovered evidence and the request for findings of facts and conclusions of law, they state that at 12:39 p.m., an unknown phone, which would be phone number 1, comes within 60 to 100 yards of the crime scene, which means there's somebody already out in that neck of the woods on that side of the creek with an unknown device. And like I said yesterday, you know, when you look at this crime as a whole, I don't believe that we're dealing with a happenstance crime, like somebody who, under a psychosis claims to be an alcoholic and he's gonna, he killed everybody in World War III.
Yeah.
That he drank 3 beers and it screwed him up so bad he didn't know if he was coming or going. This crime was not committed by someone like that.
He also had a heart condition. Both the girls were same height. Libby was in better shape than he was. She's a swimmer. She's in all kinds of sports. This man had a heart condition. Like, there's just, even physically, it's ridiculous even just on that.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the fact that, we'd have to rewrite everything we know about violent criminals and all, like, he skipped all the stages of escalation that even some of the most violent people spend decades escalating to. Like, there's on all these different levels. He makes no sense as a suspect. But yeah, I don't.
And I look at this crime from start.
Yeah.
I hate to keep saying Rick Allen because I don't believe it's Rick Allen, but the state wants everyone to believe that it is. But you take this crime based on their theory and their timeline from beginning to end, and the middle part of this crime you would think was done by a experienced killer.
Yeah.
Within a matter of moments, in between comings and goings of multiple different people in broad daylight in an area where sound travels ridiculous, he was able to sweep these 2 little girls, like you said, in shape. He's got 2. I'm sorry, but in a panic mode.
And nobody heard any splashing of crossing the creek.
Nothing.
I can't get past that. Like,
no.
even if he has their silence, you cannot. The water makes noise if you're crossing. Even if you're going slowly or carefully, you're gonna hear 3 people crossing, even if they're all silent.
And you're also when I get into the phone data part of this, you're also going to see how that part of the timeline doesn't add up either, because where there's clothes, where there's the belt, where the 7-minute time increment of no movement happens, then the shortness of crossing the creek after that fact and to the crime scene, everything happened so fast. You've got 2 girls, literally the steps and the time, you've got these 2 girls running and undressing at the same time. And it's just not plausible when you have people on the bridge, then you have 2 girls Cheyenne, Shelby Duncan, supposedly at the south end of the bridge, exactly where the bridge guy video ended, within minutes of them being taken off that bridge using the bathroom, and they heard and seen nothing.
Well, also within minutes of when Weber would have driven up.
Right.
Like, how did he not see them? Because the side that they went down, I mean, it's like the same time he's on camera on the surveillance footage at, I think it's 2:44, and she's taking her picture at 2:49. Like, that is, as soon as she took that, she was going down. Like, he would have had, like, she would have, even if he didn't see them, they should have seen him drive by. I don't
And
know
she
if
was
he went through the other entrance he has to his house and he never actually did even drive it under. Maybe he went the other way. But, like, how did it's another case of how did these people not see each other? Their timestamps are placing them in the same place at the same time.
and she was asked at trial about the road that went under the bridge, and her response at trial was, "There's no road that goes under the bridge."
What? I didn't
Yes.
catch that. I didn't see
Yes,
that.
at trial. Yes, she did. She did. There's a couple of things that she said, and I
crazy.
just this week went back and listened to all 3 recaps from Andrea Burkhart to Lawyer Lee to Hidden True Crime. She stated there's no road that goes under the bridge. And in Andrea Burkhart's recap, she claims there was a moped at the Mears lot. And in Lawyer Lee's recap, she claims that Cheyenne testified to there was a girl on a moped at the Mears lot. And I'm like, this is the first I have ever heard of a moped.
Well, I don't know that it would be what she's referring to, but I remember I have some notes somewhere to see if somebody either mixed up the witnesses, because there was Sarah Carball, after she saw Bridge Guy, or the Muddy Bloody Guy apparently, she said that when she drove by, there were people frantic at Mears Lot. At least everything I'm about to say is according to media poll reports. So take it with a grain of salt, because you know it's people who were there and then reporting someone else's notes when they went back in. But she saw it. But the moped person at 4 o'clock, Maya and Evan were there. One of them rode their scooter and the other rode their, I forget what it's called. I have it written. It might be actually on there if you keep scrolling, but they would have been there right around 4. And so Cheyenne would have seen them if they had gone back there at 4. I don't know if it was a moped, but whatever. I've been meaning to try to see if there's any report, like more clear reports about what type of thing that they both arrived at the trail at individually. Like, they both came up on their individual thing. One was a scooter, one was I want to say razor. Not like the ones like the little kids use. It was like something else. And I thought, well, maybe that's just the term that the journalist used because she couldn't remember the type. I would very much like to get these transcripts so we could see if that would help settle it. But I don't know if moped is the same as scooter, but there were people there on some sort of something at 4 o'clock arriving, but they were kids. And some people are saying ladies, some people are saying there were kids out there too. Like, it's very difficult to make sense of the descriptors other people are using.
Yeah, I have a couple of names. I want to say the last name's McDonald, the male and a female, and they were each on an ATV, a single seat ATV.
That's interesting. I only know of the Maya and Evan, and they each were on something separately, and then Maya's dad was there at 4:30. I don't know if he was there to pick her up. Maybe they did arrive on one thing instead of 2, because I don't know why he was there. And he apparently did a lineup, and but it's hard to know without being able to see the transcripts or the reports if these are people being conflated or if these are individual things. But he supposedly did a lineup for whoever he saw when he was there. And I don't really know what to do with it, because he must have been the only one who did one, as far as I know.
Okay, so here's the important part of the timeline. At approximately 1:15, Betsy Blair, after completing her second loop, Betsy reaches the trail split and walks to her vehicle to drive to the library and use the restroom at 1:15. And this is based on testimony of Betsy Blair on November 5th of 2024. If Betsy Blair is getting in her vehicle at 1:15 to go to the Delphi library, we've got problems.
Well, that's supposedly when her Fitbit data stops and what the Hoosier Harvest Store says. But both of those are have variances. It's very frustrating to me, at least. I feel like the problem with her timeline is also when she returns to the trails.
Yeah.
Because the 4 girls, it doesn't take more than, like, they would have crossed paths with the unknown male at like 1:30, 1:31, and that was leading right up to the Freedom Bridge. They would have been long gone by the time Betsy drove under there. And it's very tight on whether or not he would be in front of or behind her at that point. Like depending on what time she actually did arrive back and actually start walking, but she wasn't there very long either. Like her third loop, other than her saying she walked left immediately, I don't know if she also went down the Mary Gerard Trail where she would walk halfway down and turn around and then go to Freedom Bridge. I don't know if she skipped that part for her third loop, but she was on the trail for less time. Like if you doubled the amount of time she was on there for the third loop, that's less time than she was there for the first 2 loops. So something was different, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we don't know which part is different or where she went or didn't go to account for that time, or if it was an issue with the Fitbit data just not recording something, or if it, especially when it comes to movement and smart devices and triggering events.
Yeah, I mean,
with the other case, we've heard a lot about that. It's different with a vehicle than a person, but there's wiggle room, unfortunately, for, like, it's not that it's not accurate, but usually you would want more information to kind of make it more precise by default of, okay, it could be this, it couldn't be that. You can kind of start triangulating it with other information or other things, but we don't have any of that. I mean, it exists, but we don't have it.
Yeah. And then you really have to believe that Rick Allen has moves like Jagger and literally can get in and get out with no one seeing him except 4 girls who were all together, who all identify somebody completely different, which brings me to, I want to play this really quick just to remind everybody how out of touch. I'm going to go over the interview or the questions that the juror number 2 has answered. But when you're speaking and you're thinking logically about reasonable doubt or what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, I guess I'm at a loss as to wonder why a juror would never want to know why an individual who was put on the stand to identify a killer wouldn't be asked, do you see that man in this courtroom right now? Not one of them the state asked, and not one of those witnesses identified the same individual. They all had different descriptions, starting with this.
The only real substantive thing that Ms. Auger brought up in the cross-examination is this concept of interpolation and these programs that he was using for this audio.
Sorry, I started it too far back.
Isolated almost.
Sorry.
So that incongruity, it's very, very peculiar. She did acknowledge that it was possible that seeing that picture of a bridge guy influenced her memory, like I said. The next witness was Breanne Wilbur, who was also out there on the trail with them. She was 16 and also in 10th grade. Kelsey was one of her best friends, so she knew Libby, and Libby was friends with her on Snapchat. So she reiterated that they had gone out to the High Bridge Trail, that they went out. She went out with her friends Rayleigh and Anna. She would not go across the bridge. Like, this girl thinks like me. She's going to go out maybe 1 or 2 steps, but not all the way. She's not one of those people. She said they saw a few people while they were out walking, and they were just taking pictures out at the High Bridge and chatting. And that she
Who are the few
posted
people?
some of their pictures on Snapchat. When they were leaving, they took the same path back, and they also saw people there. So she had provided police with the photos taken from her Snapchat that had the timestamps on them. On Exhibit 211 was copies of her Snapchat photos. So the first one that she provided was a photo of High Bridge that was taken at 12:43 p.m. And then the photo that they had described taking at the benches on the way back, that was taken at 1:26. So this is the state's way of trying to move back the timeline, to undo the damage that Ms. Voorhees had done to the timeline by saying it was 2:15 when they saw Bridge Guy down at Freedom Bridge, when Libby's video was at 2:13 over on High Bridge, and the man is supposed to be there. And that is just, it's not feasible. It's way more than a 2-minute distance away. But they didn't really establish how did the timing of the photo relate to when they then continued on the walk home. Did they hang out at this bench for a while? Did they walk slowly, so that they got to the home at 2:20? These points didn't really get reconciled. There still seems to be room to kind of work with either timeline. She said the man that they passed caught her attention because it was a warmer day, but he was dressed in many layers with what she described as a deer jacket. And she said he was walking with a purpose. Rayleigh had been saying hi to everybody that they passed on the trail because it's a small community like that, and people are friendly and they say hi to each other. It's not at all like California, where you walk past people and they don't even look at you. Like if you said hi to somebody on the sidewalk in California, they might think you were going to rob them or something. Not friendly at all. This is not that type of community. People say hi to each other. This guy, however, did not say hi back, and they got creepy, weird vibes from him. So she had learned that Libby was going out to the High Bridge because Libby had messaged her on Snapchat after seeing her photo of the High Bridge, and so asked if they were still out there. They were still on the trail when she got that message, and she responded that they had just left the High Bridge about 10 minutes ago. Later on, they learned that they were missing. She was at home and was with Kelsey, and Kelsey's grandma had called to let Kelsey know, and that is how she found out. She spoke to the police later that evening because she had been on the High Bridge that day, and gave a statement about the people that she had seen on the trail. So her description was that she had seen a man walking with a purpose. He had something covering his mouth and nose, but it's possible his head was down, and that, maybe she's suggesting he had a high collar or something like that, but not necessarily a mask, just something covering his head or nose. She could not really see his hair, said the jacket was blue or black, and maybe had a hat or a hood on. Later learned that Abby and Libby were deceased. Then she saw the image of Bridge Guy, and the first thing that came into her mind is it was the guy we saw on the trail, and she identified him in court as the same as Exhibit 210. The last photo in the area is the one that was near the farmhouse where they were still in the woods. And when they passed Bridge Guy, he was walking towards High Bridge, and she confirmed that the timestamp on her Snapchat photo was accurate. Mr. Baldwin did the cross-examination of this.
So, first of all, the one thing that I took away from that clip is the amount of time these girls spent on the trail, and the amount of people that they claimed that they encountered or passed that we never heard about. Then you've got the unidentified bridge guy in the courtroom that no one wants to point the finger at, and the dark clothing, which I don't think, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I mean, out in broad daylight, I wouldn't think that a man wearing a blue jacket and blue jeans, I would consider to be dressed in dark clothes. What about you guys? I don't know. That's just me.
Well, I mean, there was also someone who was spotted earlier in the day who also seemed overdressed to the person who saw him. So I don't know. I don't know what overdressed means. Like when you see people who went out there, I think it was I don't know if it was HLN or for the Down the Hill series, but I want to say it was at least Barbara McDonald who's doing the interviewing, walking with someone down the trail. And
Mhm.
she mentioned the weather the day that they were there doing the interview. And it was the same degrees that it was on the day of the murders. And she was bundled up
Mhm.
in the interview. So
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the person. People from Texas are typically overdressed for cold weather because we don't like it, but not all of us. Like, I usually am like, I'm only gonna be out there for 30 seconds. I'll keep my shorts on. Like, for me, that
Well,
I just don't really know what to do with that because what does overdressed mean? Like, he had more layers on than they did?
well, or he's somebody who doesn't, I'm not somebody who pays attention to the weather, so I'm either overdressed or underdressed, and, you know, I get out of work, because when I go to work, it's still dark out, so it's cooler. But when I get out of work, I'm like, "What the hell?" Like, I was freezing this morning. I don't pay attention to the weather and what it's going to be, so if it's, earlier in the day, especially, like, around noontime, you haven't really quite crossed, into that afternoon, temperature rise that you may get. So I agree with you. There's, what's overdressed. And I would rather have extra and be able to take it off than to be cold.
Well, also, if he was the person who was there at 8:45 that morning, parked at the CPS building, maybe he had just walked back to his car and walked back from his car, and he had on all those layers because he'd been out there all morning. I just, I just, I don't know what to do with the clothing descriptions because they're not relative to the other stuff. It's not actually helpful because 4 people who were all together gave different descriptions of the same person's clothing.
Right. Well, we're going to, so now that, I mean, I'm still not done with the whole Daniel Pearson group. I'm actually still, I'm working with a couple of people on working out those statements because it's chaotic. What we know, what we don't know. Um, what'd she say? Was saying this last week? Tank tops, 2 sweaters, and yeah, Lindsay. I'm in Ohio too. I'm with you on that. Yes, the weather here has been freaking bonkers. Um, so moving on to another issue that was never touched on at trial are all of the vehicles that were not just parked at the Mears lot, but we have vehicles parked along the side of the road. We have a vehicle seen on the private drive, and we have a variety of descriptions. But the one thing that's in common with all of them, for the most part, is paper plates, which that's a red flag. So we've got the 207 Snapchat photo of Abby on the bridge at 207. At 208, there is now let me clarify. I don't know where the color of the car got misconstrued at all. I don't. So let's just start fresh here. The vehicle I had reported on the private drive at 2:08, I originally thought was a dark colored vehicle. It is not. It is a white colored vehicle. And what we don't know and what was never asked was on the day, which I'm assuming it wasn't closed because we're to believe that Brad Weber's van drove right through the private drive. There's a gate that they have installed there. And I'm assuming the gate was open. But we see a vehicle drive in. And I'm going to, for the first time ever, you guys are going to get to see this shot of this vehicle. So let me share my screen. This is the same camera that the okay, hang on, I gotta find it. Sorry. This is the same camera that Brad Weber's van was caught on at 244?
Yeah, 244.
Okay. So let me pull this up. Sorry, guys. Now I gotta share my screen. Sorry. So here's the photo of the white vehicle. And I can't enlarge it. I will see to it that I get this in. Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can save it into my files, and then I will pull it up by itself because then I can zoom in on it. But this is the photograph of the vehicle. Okay, let me see if I can pull it in here this way. So I can zoom it in.
And he started by going to the big photo of
Sorry.
Bridge Guy.
Sorry. Okay, now I should be able to enlarge it. So to the right of the center of the screen, there's a vehicle, a white vehicle heading in towards the bridge. Beyond this tree line here is where the gate would be and where the private drive begins. So this is at 2:08, which would be pretty much right around the 2:07 mark where Abby is still near the third platform on the bridge. Why this vehicle? This was pretty much one of the only vehicles seen on that camera that day besides Brad Weber's van. And it pulled in, and then within a minute later, it pulled back out. So we have that vehicle there. Freeze, stop it. We have that vehicle there, which in the tally of things, sorry, I have a little Yorkie who thinks she's baby Cujo in the background. So when we tally up all of the vehicles with the description of a white vehicle within a 24-hour period, supposedly being reported at the Monon High Bridge trails, we start with early morning from Tina Rodell's claim. She reported, she even called the police, being Tony Liggett, to report about this white vehicle, which that vehicle she claimed to be a Dodge Dart. But a Dodge Dart can also be mistaken for a Honda Accord. We've got the Dodge Dart on the 12th, reportedly going to the Monon High Bridge. We know we have the call log from Tina Rodell's daughter, Megan, calling after midnight, which would be the 13th, calling her mom about shit going down. But they left in this white vehicle with the paper plate, and that's the plate number. Then we've got the white vehicle at 2:08 p.m. seen on the private drive on the 13th, the same time as the Snapchat photo on the bridge. Then we have number 3 over here at the top right. This is David Riley. He parked at an angle on the Mears trailhead at approximately 2:30 p.m. When he says the Mears trailhead, he's talking about the Mears lot. David is seen on the Hoosier Harvest Store driving a Honda Ridgeline and saw no other vehicles when he parked at 2:30. David walked his dog to Freedom Bridge. He walked his dog for approximately 30 minutes. When he left, David saw a white Impala and a white Honda Accord. When he was arriving at the trails, David saw a charcoal gray 4-door. He didn't say whether it was a vehicle or a van, but a 4-door charcoal gray vehicle leaving the cemetery, possibly going east. So that is when he is on his way to the Mears lot. So he didn't see any vehicle at the Mears lot at 2:30, but he's seen a gray vehicle leaving the cemetery. So
Well, I
we
have
have
questions about what direction he was coming, because he couldn't have passed the car leaving the cemetery at 2:20, 2:30 if he had come from the other way.
this was taken directly from his statement that he gave. Actually, I think it was taken from I have to pull it up. It's somewhere in my file in a Dropbox here. He did an interview. He did a public interview. It's like one of the only interviews that he did where he states this. And that's another issue that I have. I keep coming across all of these people or all of these narratives. And what sucks is that these are statements that we should be able to take verbatim because they were so near February 13th of 2017. Yet I still find, especially with like Daniel Pearson and Cheyenne and them, I still find like, okay, well, you just said that you arrived here, but you were here at this time at the same time, so you can't be in two places at once. And we shouldn't be stuck having to figure all of this out because we should have gotten the answers at trial, and we didn't. But yeah, I agree with you. His timing is a little bit awkward, and it sounds to me like he came in 300 where he passed Ron Logan's and the cemetery, and then came up on the Mears lot, which would be on his left, and parked.
Well, that's
And
why I
why
think it would be good to have the Hoosier Harvest Store so we could see, like, is he seen twice on Hoosier Harvest Store or just the once?
exactly. I mean, I would like to see the whole Hoosier Harvest Store
Me
video.
too.
Why we only got the screenshots
I don't
is
know. It drives
beyond
me crazy.
Yeah. And then so we have the number 4 is we have the white vehicle, which was also witnessed parked at the Mears lot at 3 p.m., which was a Michelle Weiss, and she described it as a Honda. And then I was able to track down her actual post about it. So this was posted on February 16th at 7:04 a.m. It was in the Liberty German and Abigail Williams case discussion group. Says, saw this the other day in comments on a news thread, I believe. It's already been forwarded to the authorities in case it's a lead, but wanted to share it here in case anyone recognizes the vehicle descriptions. It could be nothing, but yet could be everything. Update, white car has been checked out by authorities and not a suspect. Michelle Wise posted, when I went by there at 3, there was a white car parked along the road with paper plates on it and a dark color car parked in the drive by the gate to go in, but didn't get any details. didn't know about this till afterwards. And then she tagged the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. So other reports that I tracked down stated that Cheyenne was the dark car. But when I go back and I listen to her testimony from trial, she claimed that there were cars there and she had to pull into the grass. So if the dark car parked in the drive by the gate, I don't know if that means it was pulled in straight up by where the gate would be. And I don't know where that gate would be at that time, because at this point, the only gate that's there is literally on the road. I mean, if you climbed it, you would be standing on 300. So I don't know
Both
if they
Shelby, Hicks, and Cheyenne parked along the side of the road for the same reason. They both had to park, like parallel park by Mearsot because there was nowhere else to pull in.
Exactly. And when you look at these times, okay, and you take Cheyenne's testimony, which I encourage everybody in chat to go back to Andrea Burkhart or any of the three of them and listen to their recap of Cheyenne's testimony. And if you followed this case from the very beginning, you would know how detrimental it is that we didn't hear from the others that were a part of this whole story from the very beginning. I mean, Cheyenne was a major key figure in this case in the very beginning because of the fact that she was there immediately after the girls went missing. And then you back that up even further, you've got her and her friend, Shelby Duncan, arriving, and on their way to the Monon High Bridge, they pass Dave McCain, which means Dave McCain had to have arrived when?
He also was already on the bridge when Shelby, Hicks, and Daniel Pearson walked up. He was there before them.
See that? Okay. Well, then you're dealing with the whole dilemma of what did Dave McCain report actually to Derek German? When Derek German arrived right around 3, shortly after, which there's a discrepancy there because he claimed he was calling Libby before he got there, but those phone calls aren't on the record. I think the first phone call that we see outgoing to Libby is at 3:11. But Derek is walking up the trail, runs into Dave McCain after Cheyenne and Shelby Duncan. And he said there was a couple arguing. And that's where the discrepancy lies. Were they arguing because it's reported that it was under the bridge? And then there's reports that he didn't say under the bridge. He said at the bridge. And Becky Patty is the one who inserted under the bridge.
Yeah, and I think that actually came from they were looking at all of the girls' Snapchat photos that day, and Bree and them did go underneath the first trestle area to take pictures. And so I do think that is probably most likely why she said down under the bridge, because Kelsey was the one who was pulling up everybody's Snapchat pictures and saying, well, they were here, you know, these people were here. She said she knew there were kids there. It's probably because she saw their Snap story. I mean, I don't know where else that could have come from, but the thing
unless he was on the bridge and he heard people underneath of him arguing. And these photos that I'm about to pull up clearly show when I say the answers to this case lie all right here. If you've ever been out there, or I'm just going to assume that the majority have not, okay? So this top picture, the very top picture, you see the creek that runs under the bridge. The creek right here underneath the bridge is very thin. It kind of like pulls in and it tightens. So more than 3/4 of the bridge going towards the south end, there is no water underneath of the bridge. So if you're standing up top here on the north end of the bridge and you look over the side, you can see everything diagonal over underneath the south end of the bridge wide open. So if he's up top here and and the sounds out there travel, if he's hearing arguing underneath of him, you can't assume that it's directly right here underneath the north end of the bridge. It could have been on the other side of the creek, because if the girls would have been brought down that south end, they could have been brought immediately around to the left up underneath the south end of the bridge, thinking that they were going to be hidden. But
Well, also, he said that he thinks he might have seen people off in the distance when he got to the bridge at trial. He said he got there around 2, he walked to the bridge to take pictures, and there may have been some people off in the distance.
Well, and then that brings me to this photo right here in the far bottom right-hand corner. I'm convinced that there's not one, but multiple. I can't say 100% for sure 3 people, but these are not trees. This is not the barrier on the bridge. When you look at this barrier right here, so from left to right, you see the images of the barrier. If you are right up on this barrier, you do not have a clear shot to the bridge. It's not wide open. Then if you go around the barrier and you walk up to the first platform, the first wood plank of the bridge, beyond that, there's no trees. So look at this picture, this third picture from the right. You can clearly see how much space is in between the trees and the start of the bridge on the north end. There's a major wide open space here. So where do these dark images come from and what are they? And I know that for years, we just all dismissed them like, oh, that's the barrier. Well, first of all, I think that we all just assumed that the barrier had 3 posts, and it doesn't. It's only got 2. And where's the middle bar connecting all 3 of these figures right here? I mean, I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm saying if we're talking a mastermind of a crime and we were talking multiple people and the girls were lured out there, there's really no right or wrong answer, except that all of this makes more sense than this just random guy one day at almost 50 years old decides, hey, I'm going to walk out here in the middle of broad daylight and I'm going to get who I can get,
After
regardless
passing
who.
4 people, making sure 4 entire people see him
Yeah.
first, that doesn't snap him out of it or make him cautious.
And I'm going to shoot my shot and hope that on this massive multi-football field length bridge, no one sees me. And I'm going to take them over here to the perfect spot and take their lives rather quickly. And then I'm going to play all these games with them and stage everything. And then I'm going to walk clear out onto 300 in broad daylight in front of everybody with a massive amount of people sitting there at Mears Lot who are absolutely desperately looking for these girls. And I'm going to become the invisible man as I pass the Hoosier Harvest Store camera.
Yeah, and then I'm going to go tell Dan Doolin I was there when it happened.
Right. Exactly. I mean, all of that, people like literally they believe all of the craziness, and I don't get it. I really don't get it. So anyway, we're back to the cars. We've got the cars. We can see that there's definitely something with a white car for an area that is supposed to be secluded, that even locals have heard of it but didn't know where it was. It's bizarre to me.
Well, Shelby Hicks also had paper plates on her vehicle. She had just picked up her car from the shop that morning. So I know it's strange to me that there's more than one white vehicle with paper plates in this story, except for the fact that it's Delphi. So it's, of course, there's two.
Well, she's the one who drove the Impala, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
And
So,
according to Cheyenne and Shelby Duncan, she drove a quote deep purple Chrysler. I forget what kind, but apparently it was a deep purple Chrysler, and but like a sedan, not the
so
cruiser.
I was going to say, is that the purple PT Cruiser that someone thought they saw?
I
Oh
want to say it
God.
was a 400 or 500. I think it's a sedan. I should probably look that up though. But I'm pretty sure it was characterized as a sedan.
Hmm. So this next slew of screenshots implicate Mike Patty. And I believe this one, I tried to pin down the date and I couldn't. However, I can only assume that it was posted before one of the hearings or posted after trial. Because this is a person who is basically staking claim that Shelby Duncan didn't testify because her timeline would not match Cheyenne's. She told her grandfather that her and Daniel went to the trails at 1:30. Daniel said a later time. Daniel also said he saw Mike Patty at 3:09, but he has been shut down. I need to go back and also find the screenshot of where someone claimed that they saw Mike Patty at the marathon buying Gatorade.
It's interesting. I've heard the thing about 1:30. I have not heard that he said he saw Mike Patty, but I do know in one of the reported interviews, they said that there was a white Derek station wagon. They didn't know it was his, but the car that they described would have been Derek's when they got there, which would have been way earlier than when he did arrive. So
Which
I
was
have,
a
I have,
Subaru. I
yeah, the
think it's a Subaru.
yeah, all-wheel drive or something, station wagon. But I have so many questions about these afternoon witnesses and their interviews because it is very difficult to know if the person who took the report pulled a Dan Doolin where somebody said, I saw two vehicles at the farmer's entrance, and that is then turned into I parked at the Farm Bureau building, and then
Right.
later turned into actually I parked at the CPS building because that's what, like it's hard to know when it's miswritten, misunderstood, miscommunicated. I don't know what to do with these ones that you're about to go into though. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, I think the problem that the state has with some of these is that I pulled out the ones that were pertinent, but these were all dated within February and April of 2017. So these are these aren't even statements that that law enforcement had the ability to lose, rewrite, or change. These are public statements that were made on social media that were captured. And some of these are basically people questioning directly Daniel Pearson on Facebook about what transpired that day. And they are talking about, and I was trying to condense this, but they're talking about David McCain. And he's being asked, have you ever considered that he could have been the killer? And Daniel Pearson says, I don't believe so. At first, he seemed creepy to me. But as we walked past it, just seemed as if he was there, that it was just as if it were nothing, just like a man taking pictures of the trees as scenery. Then he was asked, did he happen to have a white scarf on or anything white around his neck? And he said, not that I remember. Then Daniel comes back and says, the man taking pictures had a hat on that looked like this, if I remember right. Yes. Now, this is speculation, so nobody say case by case said or Amy said. I'm not saying this is factual. However, I do believe that that David McCain and Dan McCain, his brother, wore similar apparel all the time. And they both were in charge of taking care of the trail system. And it's been reported that Dan McCain was actually out at the cemetery and he was riding his bike, his bicycle, 10 speed, whatever you want to call it. And go ahead.
Oh, you
Go ahead,
you
Eli.
beat me to it. I was about to say what, and then you said it. Yeah, that I haven't heard the part about the cemetery. I've only heard that he was seen on the mirrors camera driving. He was seen twice, so I assume that would be not driving, but like riding his bike twice. I have not heard the part about the cemetery, but I also don't know what to make of, like, how was he seen on mirrors? I don't know if that was just a misspeak and they actually meant Hoosier Harbor Store.
They probably did because they're literally like you
Yeah.
pass one and then the other, coming and going. So they're both right there.
I
Within
wish we had
30
a time for that.
Right. But this is another thread here, and to the right, this is a picture that circulated nonstop way back in the day. That is the Young Bridge Guy sketch and Daniel Pearson. I didn't create this. I didn't put them side by side. This is something that's been circulated out there forever, because a lot of people believe that if you were to believe the 1:30 arrival time of Daniel Pearson and Shelby Hicks, because it was said that the two of them were secretly seeing each other, supposedly, was their excuse for being at the trail that day. They would have been the arguing couple, whether it have been on the bridge or under the bridge, but this is the correlation between the images. So a lot of people believed that Betsy Blair saw Daniel Pearson, not the older bridge guy sketch. So this person, Tina Lackey, is asking Daniel Pearson about his recollection, or Daniel Pearson is attacking Tina, basically saying, "You're ruining my life by accusing me." So he says, "You guys have no clue about this shit. Leave it to the police to investigate and stop trying to ruin people's lives." Tina comes back and says, "Daniel Pearson, not trying to ruin your life. I was making fun of some groups that think you are a suspect. I apologize." Holly Marie, Tina Lackey responds to Holly Marie stating, "Idiot told a few people he was under the bridge when the girls first went across, then backtracked and said he hadn't got there yet, which his girlfriend backed up. Yet the girlfriend here claims that they got there at 1:30 and her timeline doesn't add up to Daniel Pearson's. Long story short, none of these people have ever been able to get their story straight as to when they arrived and when they left and who they were there with.
The
And I
Hoosier
can
Harvest Store would probably help clear that up. That's why it drives me so crazy. What time was her vehicle? Because she was coming from where, Monticello or?
No, well, that's the thing, because I have it. Let me see here. So Shelby Hicks, so based on a timeline that I came across from early on, and I want to say this came from Delphi Docs, Shelby Hicks arrives in Delphi. The friend stated Shelby said she was with a group of friends from Lafayette and that they all went out to eat in Delphi after Shelby picked up her vehicle before heading to the trail at approximately 1 to 1:30. Teresa Liebert said around 1 to 1:30, her and Dave went for a drive and she saw a black car parked into the old welfare building. Was this a follow-up interview before or after RA was arrested? We don't know. At 1:01, Betsy reaches the trail split and takes a left toward Freedom Bridge, continuing her second loop. This one, 1:15, lines up with what the other timeline that you have says is at 1:15, Betsy leaves for the library to use the restroom, which gives her, I'd say, what, 14 minutes?
I think she was gone for a total of 20-something minutes. I
And
think
that puts
it's
her,
on there somewhere how long it had been. I wrote it down because I can't ever remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I probably wrote it in the timeline.
so It's a conundrum. It really is. Like it is so hard to pin down what's factual and what's not.
Well,
But
Veronica is one of the people who always remembered that Shelby was with people when she first heard about
Mhm.
it. She knew Shelby, and she doesn't remember hearing anybody bring up Daniel's name at all until years later. Like when she was having her conversations with the people that she knows. I don't know if the early conversations include Shelby. If she's in the chat, she'll probably correct me. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but she did have conversations with Shelby Hicks over the years, and she was surprised when she did finally hear Daniel Pearson's name. But she did know that. My question has always been, okay, she got the call about her car being ready and then drove to Delphi to eat lunch maybe with her friends. And then did they go home and she just met Daniel at the trail? Or did they all go to the trail? Those are the kinds of questions that I have about how many people actually were with them
and then
and
when
what
you go
time that
back
was.
and when you go back to the earliest reports, um, technically from Tina Rodell and her daughter Megan, they claim that Cheyenne wasn't there with a Shelby at all, that she was there with a Cheryl Loeffler.
Well, even when the FBI went to go visit her, like 6 months
Mhm.
later, they kept trying to get her to say she wasn't. Of course, they were trying to get she, according to her testimony or the trial reports about her testimony, she said they kept asking her, like, "Are you sure this is Shelby Duncan, not Shelby Hicks?" And she was like, "It was Shelby Duncan." And they were like, "Are you sure?" Like they continued pressing her about it, almost. I don't know if wanting her to change her story is the correct way to put it, but they weren't accepting what she was saying. But I have
Right.
also heard the part about Cheryl, and I always wonder if that was them trying to, like, okay, well, if they could get her to say it at least wasn't Shelby Duncan, maybe they could say, well, how do we know it wasn't Cheryl then? Like
Yeah.
it's difficult to know the line of reasoning or where that came from, but she apparently was very frustrated by that. She's
Mhm.
very, but we also, regardless of, I mean, I guess there could have been a third person there, but the Snapchat pictures that aren't Cheyenne's are Shelby Hicks with the timestamps that are in that exhibit. So
Well, see, and then that begs to differ because Shelby Hicks was supposed to be with Daniel Pearson, not Cheyenne. It was supposed to be Shelby Duncan, who Cheyenne testified that they were at another park, her and Shelby Duncan, and then she was like, "Have you ever been to the Monon High Bridge trails?" And she said Shelby said no, so they drove over, they parked, they walked out to the Freedom Bridge, and that's when they ran into Daniel Pearson and Shelby Hicks.
yeah. And she would have
Um,
had to have start crossing by 240 to take that picture. And if they were already on the bridge and didn't, like, I think the 1:30 timeline, maybe it might not be quite as early as 1:30, but I do think it's much earlier because Dave McCain at trial said he was there around 2 to 3, and he was already
mhm.
there before Shelby and Daniel walked up. So I think everybody was actually there earlier
Yes.
than before,
And that's
just
why
because if
I'm
you reverse all of their timestamps, they had to have been there earlier.
and that's why I think the images in the back of the BG video show whether those people in the foreground were participants or not, there were people there. I truly
That's what's
believe that
important. Yeah, there were people at the trail and on the bridge while the state says the girls were being dragged across the creek and
Mhm.
kidnapped, attempted to be assaulted, and dragged across the creek and then killed
Right.
while people were there and arriving. And now we know there's even more people. David Riley was there at this time when this would have been occurring. He would have been pulling up. His dog was with him. Even if he didn't
Yeah.
hear it, his dog probably would have been going crazy.
Carl Abbott was in a canoe.
What?
Uh-huh.
I thought he didn't arrive till 4:30.
He was nope. I've
I just thought he didn't enter the chat until 4:30. I did not know there was a canoe related to
Yep.
him. That's crazy.
He
I have
was,
not heard that one.
yep, he's well, proof coming soon. So yeah, he's supposedly in a canoe, and we're gonna finish the night with this photograph right here of Dan McCain, who reportedly crashed his bike that day, and it's
What?
been Yeah.
How did I not hear that either? I've never
Yeah,
heard that.
he crashed his bicycle that day, and, whether it was the day after the girls were found or later that week, he is at a meeting, and you can see clearly that his knee is jacked up, bandaged, bleeding still, um, and it has been questioned, is this muddy, bloody guy walking down 300 after he toppled over on his bike?
Oh my gosh. I thought that it was always determined that it was probably, I don't know if it was Mr. Mears or Ben Mears, because he
It
had
was
come forward
Ben
to
Mears,
say that
the
he was
butcher.
out there. Yeah, he was out in the fields and it could have been him. I don't think it was confirmed, but I thought
No,
that was the closest.
it couldn't have been Ben Mears because he was working in Fowler.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard the part about Dan. The only potential besides Logan Maxwell was Ben Mears, but neither one was ever confirmed. But I guess now we know about Mears, so that's good to know.
Well, he
Well,
had, I mean,
and the picture of Mears the next morning, in front of the fire station, he's got a dab of blood on his brown jacket. I mean, nobody would say that was muddy and bloody, and it wasn't. I mean, look, muddy bloody guy didn't exist.
I don't think he did really either. I
I
don't think
don't
he
think
did.
any of us do. I don't even think the people who
I
think
don't
Richard
think
Allen
so.
did it think he exists.
Well, no, I mean,
Sorry,
you just
Sarah.
you can't get past the Hoosier Harvest Store camera. I mean, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
just
it's true.
So, Sunflower, this is reported to be Dan McCain. Dave McCain was on the trails with his camera around his neck. Dan and Dave McCain are two brothers who help maintain the trail system. They've put a
They are
lot of
always
effort
out on
into
the
it.
trail, walking around with a
Yeah.
purpose every single day. If you ask anybody in town who knows them, they are always on that trail, walking around doing stuff. They are there numerous times a day, a lot of times. That would not be out of the norm, and I can't let that go either. Because I'm like, how many times, especially now that we know Betsy Blair was there twice, why? Who's to say that one of the McCains and or both of them weren't there twice?
Right.
Adding to the confusion about who saw who.
And it just, for me, going back through all of, I mean, I feel like, especially because I feel like we have a lot of people following the case, who came in either midway, or a lot of people came in during, when the Franks motion came out, just because it was so gripping. But if you followed the case, whether publicly or privately, from the beginning, you knew, like, all of these people they were relevant back at that time, and they've truly been forgotten about. I mean, to think back in 2017, 2018, when Cheyenne and both Shelbys and Daniel Pearson were the major players in this, with of having knowledge of some sort or being out there during that time, to think that by the time we got to trial, only one of them would be called to testify would be insane. And that's exactly what happened. That's why I feel it's important, because people watching this, or now that so for example, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you've got people like probably Shelby Hicks, Shelby Duncan, Cheyenne, Daniel Pearson, who were in an unfortunate situation at an unfortunate time. Now that all of the heat and pressure are off, they might be willing to come forward and speak publicly and say, hey, this is what happened that day.
That would
This is,
be amazing if they
it would
would,
be.
because we would even help them clarify. Like, there's clarifying questions that each of them should have been asked and still can be asked to clear up a lot of these things. And the thing about, once you clear something up or resolve it for them, like, especially with timestamps, like there's your Harvest Short or their Snapchat, we have their Snapchat photos. If there's a few other things that we can get from a few more people, it will settle a lot of things, and it will narrow the field of what is even possible within that. And I can't believe this hasn't been done yet. Like, we don't know what
Right.
time these people were on the trail. I still can't believe that the people who were on the trail and or the bridge, who placed themselves on the trail, and or the bridge while the girls are being murdered weren't even mentioned in the
At
PCA.
all.
I cannot
No.
understand it.
No,
And none of the
exactly.
cars that all those people drove in, none of the cars that all these people who were there drove in made its way into the PCA.
Not only that, but here, let me, and Candy, just for you, Michael Osbrook, I posted that up there on the screen. Candy brought up the box truck. I know that's one of your favorite what the hells in this case is the box truck sitting out there on the road for hours and no one gets out or gets in and then it just drives away.
Yeah, and it may be not. I mean, it may be nothing. And I mean, maybe somebody's on the phone, maybe somebody's asleep. I don't know. It's a very place. It's a very strange place to park. It was half on, half off the road. 100's a very narrow road.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
here's,
very.
I'm going to pull up my other PowerPoint here really quick, just to, let me see, just to kind of amplify the issue about the vehicles that, at trial, we never heard about. There was a lot of vehicles reported, photographed. I'm probably going in the whole wrong direction here. This whole vault thing is probably over 100 slides. By this point, I've had to break it into different. Maybe I did. Hold on. Might be the wrong one. Here we go. So we've got, obviously, the white Dodge Dart talked about that was seen on the 12th at Tina Rodell's, but it was also reportedly supposed to have been at the High Bridge, around the High Bridge on the 13th. Then we have this burgundy car that was sitting there on the 13th or the 14th during one of the searches. Reportedly, there was somebody in the car. We have a different car here sitting in front of the CPS building. Then out here on the road, there's your box truck, Michael. And then there's a black pickup truck that's seen, I believe, multiple times on that road that day. And the Indiana Packers camera caught this. This was on Monday, February 13th at 3:06 p.m. And then
I mean, it was a Jeep or something. I don't know whether it's an SUV, whatever it is, pickup. Yeah, it goes by, but the white truck doesn't. I mean, when I watched the whole gripping hour and 50 minutes of that video, and this black vehicle comes by, and I'm going, oh, please, 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 please follow it. And it didn't. And it left about 15 or 20 minutes later. The white box truck pulls out 15 or 20 minutes later. So, hard to say that they're connected.
Well, and it just goes to show, though, that it wasn't, like I said, Rick Allen had to be stealth to pull this off and not have already been out there. Because I personally believe that Ron Logan's property, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that the cemetery, Logan's, or even Weber's property was used as an entry or an exit. And we know that a vehicle did not leave. You got the white vehicle on the private drive at 2:08. But we know when the video ended, and we know based on what we saw on the video, it appeared the girls were on their way down the hill. So the only way out from down the hill were they had three options. That was to come back up the hill and go back across the bridge, which I believe emphatically they would have ran into someone. Or they could have crossed the creek, which would have been, everybody over here, look here, we're running through the water, being chased. We're climbing up, the side of the bank over here with no leaves on the trees and for all to see, with a man chasing us, supposedly with a gun that we now know wasn't mentioned in the video. Or somebody who came in that back way, approaching the south end of the bridge, came up on the hill, came onto the south end of the bridge, approached the girls, did a U-turn, followed them back over, took them down the hill, put them in a vehicle, and they went back out Brad Weber's other exit
Well, that
to
one at least
somewhere.
explains where the disturbance in the ground came from before the girls even got there. If they were rushing up the hill quickly to start crossing, maybe they lost their footing, and that's like I've been trying to figure out what caused it before the girls even got there. But if someone tried to come up that hill, especially quickly,
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's really only 3 options right there because we know just based on the fact that we have the Sandifer's camera, what went in, when it came out, and ACV, I'm going to be making them available. Um, I think I've made a couple because I've had to break it down into parts, the PowerPoint, just because it's so large, so you can view it online. Um, Once I get them broken up in an order, I will probably post them on my community page so you guys all have access to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I there's only really 3 options, and to me, going back out, somebody who was out there to do that kind of harm or with that intent that day, like I said, when you look at what law enforcement in the state wants us to believe about about the path traveled to get to the CPS building, or somebody who knew the area well enough to get in and out, regardless to where they parked, this person had to have known the area, coming in that direction with passing the Hoosier Harvest Store on your right, they would have passed up multiple areas that they could have pulled into to have accessed the trail without being seen. They could have pulled their car into the cemetery, backed it into the brush. They could have entered through the cemetery and gone out to the north end of the bridge and already been there and not had to deal with who was on the trails, who was out there by Freedom Bridge, walking down 300 to actually get to the trailhead out there by Freedom Bridge. That's stupid to me. And this person or people, the way it was planned and it was set up, weren't stupid. They were gloved, they were prepared. I believe the girls were taken away because I don't believe the girls were killed there. I'm sorry, but Libby's crime scene photos prove to me that she was not standing with both arteries on each side of her neck ruptured, bleeding, and the whole entire front of her body is clean. Literally, I don't care if you say that, well, her hands, her hands looked wiped. Yes, she had blood on her hands, but her hands weren't covered as if she had grabbed her neck and held that fountain of blood on her hands. Her hands looked wiped. Her neck looked wiped, like she had a bib. Like you would have thought by looking at her that she was wearing a t-shirt that was taken off and the blood didn't seep past the collar of the t-shirt.
are you talking about Libby or Abby?
I'm talking about Libby.
That's okay.
Libby's crime scene, the crime scene photos of Libby, her entire chest, if she was standing up and was moving around after being cut, that blood flow would have not only spewed forward, but it would also have covered the front of her body. And that's not the case. It is not the case. So I don't believe
Cicero's testimony was just preposterous.
Yeah. And then when you look at Libby's face and the blood flow is going upward as if she had been inverted, like almost someone had picked her up, like had her upside down, like the blood flow went up her chin, up towards her nose and her face. It wasn't.
Every time I hear that, I haven't seen the pictures, so I don't know if this is just ridiculous or not to say because I just haven't seen them. But I always think of it like the soldier carry, the before aft thing, like where you carry one person has, you're carrying you put your arms under their under their arms, and then someone else grabs their legs, like you carry them out that, like you can walk really quickly forward and backwards or whichever way, but like their head would be tilted, you know, if they're no longer with us, obviously. But like I always wonder about something like that, like if there was more than one person, the way they carried them would explain it.
It could,
but I don't
it
know because I
could,
haven't
but that
seen.
it could, but that does away that just that blows completely this, one perpetrator, this lone wolf, that blows that theory out of the water, because you're talking, Libby was athletic and she was 5'4", 200 pounds. And I don't care if you're 100 pounds, dead weight is dead weight. It becomes twice as heavy. And that's just a lot to have transpired in broad daylight. And I'm trying to track down these search patterns of people that I can find who reported where they searched. But it appears to me, the video that I showed yesterday, of the photographer or the videographer going from the edge of the creek bank up the ravine. Okay. That ravine that we watched yesterday going upwards is, if you're looking at the crime scene, that ravine would be a small distance to your left. Okay. Derek German searched that area. Then there is a reported firefighter, or a volunteer firefighter, who came down and searched up to that ravine from the cemetery. That's just two people covering that same ground. And then you listen to all of the media coverage and the people in charge of the search, especially on the evening of the 13th, how they were lined on both sides of the creek walking. I mean, the only explanation that I can come up with is when they say they were lined on both sides of the creek walking towards downtown, is they only went as far as the north end of the bridge and under the bridge, and then started going back up towards downtown. And they did not search beyond the south end of the bridge across the creek. But I find that hard to believe when the last photograph of the girl, of Abby, on the bridge at 207 was her crossing the bridge, and the first place that Kelsey claims her and Cody went was across the bridge. So
Well,
I'm
also,
trying to
if you
track.
listen to the old interviews with Sterrett, the fire chief, one of the reasons they called off the search is because he met with the sheriff and said, we have searched this sufficiently, thoroughly, more than once. And at a certain point, he was like, we need to expand our search because we've looked everywhere out here. And the sheriff agreed, and so did Mullen. And that was one of the reasons, because they thought they're either not here or they're out with friends still, but we've got to expand our search. And he does mention the phone records, because of where it was pinging. He said they had gotten some of that information. Now we know what that information is. So, but the amount of people who were out there and then continued to funnel out there, and some of them are out there throughout the entire night. And he says that they searched there.
Well, the video that I just played at the beginning of this video, this live tonight, they state in that video, I believe it was Mike Patty himself, said they had exhausted that area tenfold. And you've got Becky Patty on there saying about how many hundreds of people were out there, and it was lit up like a football field, and how grateful they were. I just don't believe the girls were there until sometime after 3 a.m. at some point. But go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, wasn't the trial testimony actually that the area was lit up like a football field?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's almost like they keep trying to shove it down our throat that we're stupid, that, you you've got hundreds of people out there. And actually, to be honest, at one point, it was stated publicly that there were thousands people coming from other states out there searching. And the girls.
Well, they're trying to shove down our throats that they're stupid, that we walked all over this place and the place was lit up and we didn't see them, but they were there.
Well, my theory about that is if they are trying to tell you that they're dumb, then you know they're dirty because there's only like that's the only thing worse than being dumb as a detective or a searcher or like a first responder. You know, like I don't like it when they do that because it doesn't sit well with me because they were so specific about how thoroughly they did search and which areas they thoroughly searched. So it's just like, okay, if you did, then why are you not open to the idea that maybe they weren't there?
Because I truly believe that during the sheriff's election, that's my personal opinion, that's when the decision within that department or within Carroll County that it was made that, okay, we got to put a stop to this case because Tony Liggett was going to lose the election or he was being called out publicly about the mishandling of the Delphi case. That's why right before the election, we have a miraculous arrest after we just went through 5 weeks of searching the Wabash River based on Keegan Kline being involved. And now we've got this random guy who has absolutely no connection to anybody just pop up on the radar.
Well, he was coming back from Peru that day. I think I'm like, was Kathy Shank just like keyword searching Peru or something? Because she's the one that found it. She was I think she was somewhat all in on that one, but
She didn't find anything.
okay, but I'm trying to hold them to their word here.
Lisa said that fellow named Williams, no relation to Anna or Abby, claimed he would have crossed the creek and gone toward the crime scene, but he was told he could not allowed to go there. There was him. And then there was also Brad German, Libby's grandfather, who had hunting dogs out there that day, actually very early in the morning of the 14th. I don't even think it was daylight out. And he attempted to cross the creek there because the dogs were wanting to go that direction.
I didn't know there were two people. And I also didn't know if there was a time frame for him. But I also have questions about that because I have seen the messages where I don't remember who it is. They're clarifying that I want to say the messages are like, no, that's not what happened. But I don't know that there was ever any resolution. Like all that did was put two versions out there instead of clearing up one. I don't know if anybody has ever found out one way or another for sure.
Well, I think Williams, what is his first name? He's done quite a few interviews. I can't think of his first name.
Eric Williams?
Yes, Eric Williams.
Yeah.
Eric Williams was out there on the 13th.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Okay,
he was
I
out
know
there
who you're talking about now. I'm with you.
Yeah, he was out there on the 13th, and he was stopped, I think, more than once from going certain places while he was out there searching. Brad German, who's Libby's grandfather, was out there the early morning hours of the 14th with his hunting dogs. And he attempted to cross the creek because the dogs were pulling to go that way. And he was stopped by, it's got a funny name. Giannicola or
no, I like oh my gosh, Cantiona or it starts with a C. I don't want to say cannoli, but I keep thinking it's like something like that.
He's the one who stopped him. And it goes even further. It goes even further than that because, and this comes directly from those close that, he was up, Brad didn't get to cross with the dogs. And then a day or two later, he went out there with family members and they put a flag in the ground in the area where.
before I forget, Capitana or Capitona.
Yes.
I just saw that
Yes.
Tracy said
Capitan-
it. Before I
Yeah,
forget,
that's
sorry, I
it.
didn't mean to
Yep.
interrupt. I'll go back quiet, but I would have forgotten by the time it was okay to talk. Sorry, go ahead.
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was him, but he stopped him. But they went out there and they had like a small ceremony in the woods there at the crime scene, and they had put some things in the ground, and I think a flag or two or something. And while they were having their memorial moment, the flag fell over, and when this is from Grandpa that he picked it up, and there was blood on the flag stick from where he had stuck it in the ground. So that to me was a very realistic story. But the fact that, there were two people who were stopped from going directly to that crime scene area the night before and the morning of.
Well,
Not
the
saying there
morning
was
of, there was actual directives from the people, like the unified, I guess the way it did become unified command was in the beginning it was fire command, and then they set up a joint command, which became unified command. But on the 14th, they were telling searchers to stay away from the south end of the bridge because they planned on having dogs come in. I don't know about the
They did.
14th, or I don't know about the 13th, why they would have turned people away, because they didn't start actively telling anybody to do that until the 14th, when the girls, everybody came back the next morning and were surprised that the girls hadn't turned up. And so I don't know what to make of those being turned away.
Is
There it is.
Capitano law enforcement?
He's
Giannicola.
fire.
There it
Giannicola
is.
is, but Giannicola is the deputy, but there's also Capitano, and he's fire.
Giannicola is the one who stopped Brad Weber.
So
you mean German?
Or yeah, Brad German. Sorry. God, too many names.
So with the search called off, what's he doing out there at 3 a.m?
Well,
No,
apparently they left at 2:30.
Brad German was out there in the morning. I think it was before the sun came up.
Giancola went to the sheriff's department at 7:30, according to his testimony. He was at the sheriff's office around 10, helping them with electronics. And then at midnight, he went out to the trails, and he was out there till 2:30. And according to his testimony, he came back at 7:30 in the morning. And so if it was, I don't know when the sun comes up, but that's the time frame we have for him.
So he would have been out there. So I believe Brad German was out there before the sun came up, early in the morning. So I would think that in the wintertime, the sun would probably be coming up around 7:30.
I mean, he though said that he got to the jail at 7:30, and he was then tasked with calling landowners
to get the deer cam.
The first thing he did was to get permission for searchers to be out on all the private property. So he was there. I would say that took at least an hour. I mean, I don't know, but in my notes, when I was trying to map out his timeline, I put I literally put 1 hour ? 2 hours, because then later when he's going out to collect footage from people he heard had some trail cams, he wasn't doing that until while he was on his way to do that, he got the call from Liggett to turn around and go to the cemetery because some people found some stuff. So if he got to the jail at 7:30 and was on the phone making calls and not on his way to go get trail cams until 11 something, it was either a different deputy or we have another discrepancy with the timeline, which is likely, obviously, but his testimony says otherwise. I'm not saying he wouldn't have got it. I wouldn't put it past any of them to just say whatever they're supposed to say.
Well, we know that it was officially documented. Come on now.
Yeah.
Everything was officially documented, and I just pulled up the sunrise on February 14th of 2017 in Indiana, and it was 7:38 a.m. So, based on what Brad German claimed, it could hold true. I don't know why.
Well, it could just be the time is off, or it could have been because there are like Giancola and Capitana, or I don't know if it's Capitona,
It
Kappa
could be
whatever.
Capitana.
He could have mixed up the names, or someone who, I don't know. I think they know who Giancola is, so I would assume maybe it was just the time was different. But these are the things that drive me crazy, because in a regular, normal, like in real life, if I had something I needed to clear up, I would just ask the person and clear it up. And
Right.
it's so difficult to do that with these things.
Right.
And I don't understand why, but it is.
Candy, yes. Sergio is I think that he's completed Kelsey's analysis. I talked to him a couple times this week, and um he's he has a million things. He's got a million irons in the fire. That's all I can say. And I have to be patient. And when because he does all of his editing of his videos and stuff himself. If you notice on his channel, he doesn't do live. So he's still working on, he's still doing stuff for the Karen Reed case. And so yes, I believe he's completed the Kelsey analysis. And as soon as his video is edited and posted, he will be on and we will talk about it. And I do believe that he's already done that analysis, and he has a prelude going into another analysis that he's chosen stemming from Kelsey. So hang tight.
That's interesting. I didn't know he had already picked another one yet, or like the next on deck.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he has. He sent me some stuff and asked me my opinion, and I'm like, I don't want to give you my opinion. I want you to use your expertise. I don't want to fill your head with my thoughts and my theories and tell you all the bad things about this one individual. I want you to, and
We want some
analyze
actual
them.
fresh eyes on it for one. Yeah.
Yes. And then I
Yeah.
said, when you're all done with all of the people, then we'll put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, and you can determine how they fit. Like, oh my God, yeah, he was a liar, but this guy's a really big liar. So I don't know. We'll see. Well, we've been on here for quite some time. All Eyes, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank
I
you for
know
having me.
you're welcome. I know it was last minute, but I was like, I need you. So Cherie and Michael, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah,
And
thanks for the opportunity yet again.
yes.
And your chat should be happy because I've been in the show. I haven't been able to use my wrench to block everybody.
That's right. Everybody, just remember, Michael's got a wrench. Don't make him use it. All right, guys. So I don't know when I'm going live again. Depending on the weather and what I've got going on tomorrow. I don't have anything planned for this weekend. So Monday, we're going to do the juror Q&A. We're going to go over that. So I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow or Sunday. Wait a minute. Is today? I'm lost on what day it is. Today's Friday, right?
Sound like me.
God, that's
I've lost all
sad.
concept of time in the last few months. I'm like, is it like with my daughters the other day? I was like 3 days off, and they were like, "Mom," I'm like, "I know. I'm sorry. Don't judge me. It happens."
Hey, Amy, watch that link I sent you by email, and call me if you feel like it.
Okay, I will. Cindy, yes, Sergio knows a little bit of the dynamics. He's got full reign that he can go ahead and do all the research that he wants. So I've left that up to him.
I think it'll be interesting that he's doing that without any guidance, because he told that story about how when he first got overseas, the first thing he did was fire everybody. And they got rid of everybody, and he brought in his own people and went in his own direction. And so I kind of think it would be interesting to see what he would, like if we can, I'll get out of the way, like whatever direction he goes, you know what I mean? I would like to see which way he goes, just on his instincts and following his own tools and experience. I'm very excited about that.
Well, as soon as I get the green light from him to schedule, and bring, I'm sure he'll post his video and then he'll come on here.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. So, all right. Well, all eyes. Thank you, Cherie. Thank you, everybody in chat. Thank you. Love you, mods. You guys are great. Thanks for always being here.
I'll do it. I'm gonna okay bye y'all because I'm gonna go get the little one.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Good
bye.
night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.